right, so this week we're going to talk about another very important topic, even more important than our DOM, or probably just as important. But this week we're going to talk about one of the most fundamental uses of JavaScript, and that's handling events. So, in order to talk about event handling, we need to talk about first the event driven programming model. Okay, so we'll start off by discussing the imperative programming model, which is what most of you are familiar with, and how we actually, it's the approach we actually used when we were in core JavaScript. All right, so with an imperative approach, you're basically writing code that is step by step set of instructions that the computer uses to take the goal. Sound familiar, right? We call this algorithmic programming sometimes because it uses algorithms. So basically, it's step by step by step by step, do this. And it's really a linear flow through the code. It really only jumps around if we're calling different functions, etc. All right, now we have to contrast this to what we call the event-driven programming, right? So most of the applications that you see now are in some way, shape, form, or fashion are event-driven. If you take in Java, and you use Swing, it's event driven, right? Or .NET Forms, Windows Forms are event driven. So it's different than the imperative program, which we sometimes refer to as sequential or batch execution, in the way that the programmer themselves don't control when the code is executed. The programmer defines code to be done when something is executed, but we don't specify when it's executed in a lot of cases. So there's multiple ways of doing the same thing, or let's say multiple entry points from the program into the same pieces of code. All right. So the basic idea behind these, or behind the event-driven model, is what we call event handlers. These are things that handle events when they occur. All right, so as some examples, an imperative program might be something that loads the payroll data from a database, or it does some payroll computations, outputs checks for your salary or your payroll. In event-oriented programming, we may dynamically generate the payroll application interface. We want to associate some loading routine with some menu item, right? So the key word here is associate. We're not specifying which menu or which load. We're saying we have some menu and we have some code that loads, and we want to associate the two. All right, associating this payroll computation with some compute menu option. All right, associating the check printing operation with the print menu option. So the key here is that in the imperative, those things are going to occur in order: load payroll, do payroll, output checks. And neither one of those can occur before the other one does. It's sequential. Here, depending on the item that the user has selected, determines what gets done. So most user interface type code is going to be event oriented. So in this case, we say the user is in charge of the sequence of operation. All right, so the basic idea behind this is that events are being generated, right? And that's the same thing as in the real world. There's all types of events being generated when something happens, right? I break into a car, the alarm goes off. So breaking into a car, right, means the alarm goes off. That's an event. All right, so we have these user actions that cause generate events like clicking or moving the mouse, all right? And browser actions like loading the browser or closing a window, all right? So in order for us to capture and use these events, you guys are going to need to be able to write some JavaScript code that handles these events. And we know how to write code that does things. That's the easy part. Now we need to learn how to take our code and associate it with a given document element. All right, and we know what document elements are, and we know how to retrieve document elements. Now we need to associate the two pieces together. All right. And we also need to be able to associate a document element with an appropriate event that's occurring. All right, so the other key thing to note here is, what is an event itself? Well, any HTML element can generate an event. And some of the commonly used events that you'll see are the click event for a button. And this occurs when a user clicks any button, or with text when the text changes. I change what I type into a check box, right? So this occurs when a user changes the value in a text field. All right, and we'll talk about a lot more of the events in just in another lecture. All right, take care.